Hi everyone, and welcome today. Today is part of our new faculty orientation webinar series, but given that the content is relevant to both faculty and staff, we've opened it up for everyone in extension to benefit. And our topic today is communications and marketing, and there will be a focus on the extension publication process. My name is Shannon Harillo, and I am the Associate Director of Extension. I'll be facilitating our webinar today. In terms of logistics, I will keep everyone muted to minimize background noise. Presenters will take questions after each section. And if you have a question and you're unfamiliar with Zoom, there is a chat located at the bottom of your screen. And you can put questions in there anytime as they arise, and the presenters will address them as they take questions. Or at the time that they take questions, you can unmute yourself. And if you're on the phone, you'll press *6 to unmute and *6 to mute. I've also turned off everyone's cameras to keep the attention on the presenters, both during the live webinar and during our recording. And the recording will be posted and available on our extension resources page. Once the webinars for the entire series are posted, I will send out an email to our staff and faculty. And as all good academic institutions do, after the webinar, there'll be a link to a short survey in the chat pod. So I hope you'll take that at the end to provide your feedback to us on how to improve this webinar and identify other training needs relevant to today's topic. So next, let me introduce our presenters. We have Shauna Lemire, the Director of Marketing and Communications, and Claudine Wharton, our Senior Marketing Specialist.
All right. Thanks, Shannon. I'm going to get us started today. I'm going to go over a few marketing and communication elements before I turn it over to Claudine, who will take up most of the presentation talking through the publications policy. Okay, so thanks again for joining us today. I'm going to take some time to share a little about who's on your communications team, who we are and what we do. We'll also review a few of the new branding resources available to you, followed by a look at the new extension website, new digital marketing resources, and some upcoming social media policies. And then at that point, I'll turn things over to Claudine for the publications policy. So who we are, again, my name is Shauna Lemire. We're a team of 7 full-time staff, collectively responsible for supporting the entire college. So it's academic units, experiment station, and extension. So while this webinar is focused primarily on extension, we do support the entire college, and some of what we do, there's some overlap. So we might be touching on some of that today as well. So again, I lead the team and our strategic communication efforts across the state. I'm based down here in Clark County in the main office in Las Vegas, but travel fairly regularly to Reno and periodically to other locations around Nevada. So if I haven't already met you in person, hopefully I'll be coming to your location soon. So if you ever aren't sure who to contact for your communication needs, I'm always a good place to start. You can come to me first. We can figure out what your marketing needs are. And if I can't help you directly, I can get you to the right person on the team who can. So Robert is our webmaster. He designs and maintains our websites and our databases, helps develop software solutions for our faculty. He also serves as our photographer and videographer for key college events as well. Ashley is also primarily on the digital side of our team. She supports our websites along with social media, digital marketing, and online storytelling. She will reach out to you frequently for input on our online blogs, Ask the Professor features, and other online communication elements. Claudine, who you'll hear from in just a moment, is on the content side of our team. She helps tell our college's story through media relations, impact statements, annual reports, and of course, the extension publications. Tiffany Kojan is also on the content side. She works also with media relations, but does also support our digital side, digital marketing elements, and also provides user training for our extension website. Tiffany does work out of the extension office in Washoe County 1 day a week on Tuesdays. So if you're in that office, she's a good first contact for you as well. Molly is our newest member. She joined our team about a month ago. She is based in Las Vegas as well and provides communication and marketing support to the extension offices in Clark County. And Cindy K. Moorhead, also fairly new to our team. Many of you may know her from her previous roles in Extension. She is now the new administrative assistant for the state office down here in Las Vegas, so supporting the communications team along with Dr. Lyles, Paul Lessick in our civil rights office, and Sheila Bray, who's our new community partnerships coordinator. So she's got a big job. It kind of supports us all. So Cindy K. is a great point of contact for you, particularly for getting marketing materials and promotional items or swag approved and printed. She's instrumental in that coordination of all of those efforts. So that's a little bit about who we are, and I'm going to introduce you to just a few of the branding resources that are available to you as well. So on our college's website, you will find a brand new brand toolkit. It's a work in progress. We are adding new items all the time, so please check back frequently. The URL is on your screen here, and the different elements that I'm going through, I'll have the URL on the top for you, and then at the end, I'll walk you through how to navigate there directly from the website. And the links will be included in the presentation for you. So some of you may have attended a webinar last week entitled Marketing is Everything, Everything is Marketing, led by Ashley Andrews. In that webinar, we reviewed in much more detail all of the resources found on this toolkit. I'm only going to hit a few of those today, but I do encourage you to take the time to watch that webinar, explore the toolkit. We'll be making that webinar available, should be posted later this week as soon as all of the captioning and transcription is done, so it's accessible. And we'll be sending out a link as well when that's ready so that you can make sure to spend some time and watch through that webinar. So perhaps the most in-demand section of that toolkit are our logos. So you'll find a page with all of the guidelines for both the university logos and our college logos. This page includes information on which logos to use, how to use them, and links to download the various versions. So you'll hear us talk about logos and also identifiers. We sort of use those interchangeably, casually, but they really are two different elements. The logo is just the graphic element. In this case, this block N, what we call the block N, that's the university's logo. The identifier is the text that accompanies the logo. So sometimes you'll hear us talk about all of this as a logo informally, but really the logo is this piece, and the identifier is anything that includes copy. So these are the university's identifiers, again, in various forms. These are the logos, and then the logo version for social media. There's a slightly different version for those formats. So in addition to the university logos and identifiers, we have a whole suite of brand new college identifiers. We have one for the college as a whole here on the far left, and each of our units, so the experiment station and extension. And you'll notice both of our unit logos are now co-branded with the name of the college always appearing together. Since our experiment station and extension collaborate so much, many of you might have dual appointments or receive funding from both experiment station and extension sources, that it'll be appropriate to have both included. And we don't want you to have to include 2 or 3 of them. So we have some combo identifiers for you here. There's an experiment station extension version on the right. And we do have one that includes all 3 of our units, the academic side, experiment station, and extension. So that version is available here for you as well when it's appropriate to highlight all 3 areas. And then finally, we do have a co-branded identifier for Extension's flagship program, 4-H Youth Development. So those of you in 4-H, you are always welcome to use this co-branded version that includes both the N and the Clover logos. So in addition to our new suite of identifiers for the college and units, we're also going to be working to create new branded identifiers for the various extension and experiment station programs. So our goal is always to strengthen the overall brand of the college in order to raise awareness for our brand and the interconnectedness of all of our work across the state. So we're going to be following the university guidelines to create various program identifiers that use different combinations of the color palette, the fonts, the block N, and different elements in order to create unique identifiers for each program, but that all look like they belong together as part of the same brand family and part of the same institution. So these that are on your screen now are just a few examples of different units of the university and their branded identifiers to see the variety that we can create with the same elements. So just to give you an idea of what they might look like, we are working with a freelance designer to help us create these a little more quickly. We've got a number of them already with him working on those. We're starting with programs like Nevada State Climate Office, Living with Drought, Wolfpack Meets, Nevada Radon Extension Program, Heart and Shield, Master Gardeners. These are all going to be in the works. If you have a program that needs an identifier or needs an update and you're not already on that list, please reach out to me and let me know, and we can make sure we understand the timeline and we get you included in that process. So if we haven't already reached out to you, we will be soon as we start working through this process. So these are coming in the next weeks and months. So in addition to the logo resources, on the toolkit is a range of branded templates. Again, that marketing webinar I mentioned will go through all of these templates in much more detail. I'm just going to hit on a couple that I think are going to be most useful to you right away. So one is the email signature. There's a really simple fillable form that will walk you through all the elements that you might want to include in your signature. And that links right there from our toolkit. When you use it, you'll get something like this. So this that you can then copy and paste into Outlook into your signature block. So a few elements I want to point out. As you know, we're no longer using the acronyms UNCE or NAES. We want to avoid using those acronyms on all public-facing communications, using our shortened names of extension and experiment station whenever possible. So that means two things that are going to be sort of new that you might need to update, even if you've been using a block like this for a while, that may need updating in your signature. One is your email address. If people have been in extension for a little while, you may have been issued an email address that ended with @unce.unr.edu. You have always had an alias that ends just in @unr.edu. We want to now make that your primary public-facing email address. So in most cases, it's your net ID followed by @unr.edu. If you aren't sure what yours is, you can check with your IT professional in your area. But please do make sure that @unr.edu is the one that we're using on business cards and your email signature for, again, public facing, with that we're not using that UNCE acronym anymore. That is also true now for the website. The new website has launched. We'll be going over that a little bit more later. But again, the new URL is extension.unr.edu, no www, and again, no UNCE. So please do update your email and your website addresses on your email signatures. One other thing to point out is how to indicate if you work in a specific county. So here you'll see Molly's example of extension always first, comma, and then the county that you work in. So that's an example of how you can represent that. If you do not work for a specific county, if you have statewide responsibilities, you do not need to put statewide behind your title or anywhere in your email signature block. The default is that you have statewide responsibilities. If you're specific to one county, you can indicate that. Otherwise, just leave it off. And that direction is coming from Dr. Lyle. So please do make sure that the term statewide is not used on public-facing communication like your email signature or your business card. So again, we've got a range of marketing templates for you. There's business card templates are here. updated letterhead, flyers, posters, county annual reports, and more. We're working with the university's marketing team to continue to create new options for you, along with a freelancer to create a suite of templates so that you've got some variety, but that they meet all of your needs. If you've got something specific you need, please let me know and we can make sure that's on our list. Again, we go through these templates in much more detail on that marketing webinar I mentioned, so it'll be worth checking out. So in addition to logos and templates, the brand toolkit also contains a number of our policies, guidelines, checklists, just other tips for you for various communication issues. One of which, of course, is accessibility. It's a big issue we're all working through this year. So the Office of the Provost is the office that oversees accessibility for the university. Their philosophy is that everyone owns accessibility. It's an institution-wide responsibility. Anyone who creates content on behalf of the university, including every college, every unit, every faculty member and employee, is responsible to ensure compliance and ensure that their own documents are accessible. That's the university's policy. So to that end, we've created a bunch of resources to help you do that. So the university requires everyone to take a basic accessibility training once a year. There's a link to that on our site. But we've also created some checklists, some cheat sheets. So once you do go through that training, you might not be using what you've learned all that often. So there's some resources here. So when you are creating a document, you've got some basic elements of what to look for. So those resources are all here. For the actual training, you'd want to reach out to the university's Teaching and Learning Technologies team or the TLT team. Again, links are here for how you get to that training. They provide basic accessibility training that's offered as a webinar. And then there's a series of more hands-on trainings on how to make PDFs accessible, how to make Word documents accessible, web accessibility, and so on. So those, if you aren't available to take them in person on campus, Don Massey is the lead over there at TLT, who will set up some one-on-one group trainings for you. He's done it for program groups or whole extension offices, and will set up virtual training for you. So for those of you that aren't physically in Reno. So all those resources are linked and available here. So another popular resource here are our photo releases. That's a question we get a lot, and we've made them all easily found right here. So we've got versions in both English and Spanish for individuals and for groups. These are those formats or forms that you have individuals sign to give us permission to use their photos on our marketing materials or social media. We do also have printable posters or large signs that you can download, print, and then display at your events. These are great to use if you have a booth at a big public event, if you're teaching a very large class. We use them for things like graduation ceremonies so that you don't have to go around and get individuals to sign these forms. If you have them posted prominently, I always recommend to take a photo of the sign on display so it's got a date and time stamp so we can show that it was clearly posted, and then we have that on record. And then you're covered to use photos of that event in marketing materials. So guidelines on how to use that form and where to find them all are again on our brand toolkit, all available on our website. So again, I touched on just a few of the branding resources and templates available on the website. I do hope you'll take some time to browse through and find other great resources for you depending on your area, and do take some time to watch that marketing webinar. I think you'll find it very valuable. So I'm going to next talk about just briefly our new extension website. Here's what it looks like. Again, the URL extension.unr.edu, no www in this case, so that's important as you're listing the URL on your marketing materials. Here's an overview of what it looks like. This photo is a rotating image, so it might not look like this when you go to it the first time, but the rest of this will. Redirects have been set up on the old site that send visitors automatically to this new site. So you don't have to try to remember what links might be out there in the world or on community sites. They will automatically be directed to this new site. The old site will be coming down in the very near future to meet our accessibility deadlines. So please do make sure that your both your profile page and your program pages are accurate and up to date. We do have a number of resources to help you do that. So just like with the branding resources, we've created a bunch of how-to documents here to walk you through some of the most common tasks that people are doing on the website. So I hope you'll take some time and look through it here. This website launched in September, October, and we've done a number of one-on-one trainings, some group trainings, as well as a webinar. So back in December, Tiffany Koshan from our team led a great webinar really walking you through in great detail how to update your profile page, how to access the database that runs this website, how to upload your publications, how to change an image. So all of those details are on the website, which is posted here. So in addition to the how-to documents, you can link right here, watch that website, or I'm sorry, watch the webinar on the website. And it is segmented into different sections. So if you really only need to know how to update your photo, you'll be able to see where to click on that webinar to get right to that piece. So you don't have to watch the whole thing every time. So it's a great resource for you to refer back to as you're updating your materials there. So again, URL is here, but I'll walk you through how to navigate to that page at the end. So again, brief little bit on the website. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of new resources that are available starting these last few months as well. So we launched a new digital newsletter to help share our college's news both internally and externally. The newsletter is titled Growing Nevada. It's distributed to your inbox every Tuesday, usually late in the day, somewhere between 4 and 5 o'clock at the moment. That's when it's being distributed. We have two versions. The one on the left here, Growing Nevada, is our external newsletter. There's 5 or 6 stories in it every week that cover all of our units. So we have academic features, research features, extension features, and there's a 4-H specific feature in every issue. That goes to all of our colleges, faculty and staff, as well as more than 10,000 contacts in our external database of key stakeholders, community partners, elected officials. It's a great way to help us communicate the work of our faculty across the state. The other 2 weeks of the month, every other week, is internal only. So this goes just to our faculty and staff. We have 2 versions of it, and it really highlights new hires, awards, accomplishments, big grants, publications, things happening within our college that our own faculty and staff would need to use, or need to know, but they're not necessarily external news or features, but we want to make sure we're being transparent and communicating across the college. So please do make sure you're receiving those every Tuesday. If you aren't, the first place to check is your spam folder. If they're there, you can check not spam, so they go right to your inbox. If you aren't receiving them, please let me know and we can check with IT to make sure you're on the right distribution list. The information that gets communicated in these newsletters primarily comes from the Dean's Leadership Meeting, which is an administration meeting that happens the first Wednesday of every month. That's the academic department chairs, our extension area directors, the associate deans, and the administrative staff. So the area directors reach out to their extension faculty and ask for updates to share at that meeting every month. That's the time that you should be sharing whatever you think would be great to include in these newsletters, so they can report it at those meetings. We then get the notes and the minutes and the reports that we turn into and follow up on to create these 2 newsletters. You can always also send information to me directly if you miss those meetings. If something comes up in between that month and you want to make sure it gets shared, please send your information to us so we can make sure it gets communicated out. It's a great way to do that. So another thing coming soon will be new social media policies. This past year, we've launched, as you've seen, a suite of new logos, new branding resources, 2 new websites on the academic side and extension side, new e-newsletters. We're updating and streamlining our communication policies and procedures, like the publications policy we're going to review shortly. So our next big project to tackle is going to be overhauling social media. As many of you know, we have upwards of 600 social media accounts across our college, and that is not ideal. So we're going to be really reviewing those accounts, see what's working, what isn't, where do we have room for improvement, and we'll be rolling out some new policies and procedures and guidelines for how best to utilize those channels this spring and summer. The university is launching their new social media policy later this spring. So we're waiting for that to be released so that our college-specific policy can flow from and be aligned with that. So for now, it's sort of status quo with social media. We're asking people not to create anything new, but you can continue sort of doing what you've been doing on social media until those new policies roll out. And those will be coming, again, this spring and summer. If you have questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out directly to me and we can try to answer your questions in the interim. So, okay, so I've given sort of the specific URLs of where to find all the different resources, but I want to show you how to navigate there directly and where you'll find it on the website. So if you go to, again, extension.unr.edu, this is the main page. Up here at the quick links, you can go right to our publications database, which will be important later when Claudine is reviewing that section. But employee resources is the site. So if you're looking for really anything that you think is an internal document and you don't know where it might live, the best place to go is extension, quick links, employee resources. And you'll come right to this page. We've got some quick buttons here for some of the key areas. This personnel management system is the database that runs the back end of this website. That is what is reviewed in detail in that webinar that Tiffany gave back in December of how to update your profile and program pages. So that's a quick link button if you aren't sure where to find that. And then if you scroll down, you'll just be able to browse through different forms, templates, policies, procedures, a whole range of those. You'll see, again, photo releases, 4-H handbook and policies, university logos. Here's the how-to documents, all of those communication website how-to documents. Here's that Extension Website 101 webinar that you can watch with the different clips for different areas you might be looking for. So the best way to get to the brand toolkit, you can search by keywords here so you don't have to scroll through. So if you're looking for publications, you can go right there and you'll see the new publications policy document, which again, Claudine will be going through in much more detail in a moment. The easiest thing to search for is logo, and you'll get all of our logos and identifiers. And if you click any one of these, you'll be in the brand toolkit. So you can click the main source, you'll see the list guides on all of these resources. Again, logos, templates, visuals, we've got things in a few places. So no matter how you navigate here, you should be able to find what you need. Accessibility resources are here. Again, information on photography, how-tos, the photo and video releases, all of that information is here. So it's the brand toolkit serves as a hub. Some of the resources are on the extension site that it's directing you to. Some are on the university's marketing department site, which it's directing you to. Some are on the Cadner, our college's site. So you don't have to really know where things live. If you get to this center, you'll be able to get directed to all the resources that you need. Or of course, always just reach out to us directly and we can try to point you to that right resource. Okay, so are there any other questions about marketing resources, the extension website, social media practices, anything that I've covered so far before I turn things over to Claudine? Oh, I see one in the chat. Is there a reason our address does not include HTTPS? It actually does when it's just not the www, but the HTTP portion is there if you're writing it out fully. It's usually implied, so you don't need to do that. People will be able to find it just by typing in extension, but that piece is part of the address. Any other questions on marketing, logos, branding resources? Okay, well, you can always please feel free to reach out directly, or we may have time again at the end if things occur to you. So with that, I will turn things over to Claudine Morton, who will talk you through the publications policy.
All right. Go. Everybody can hear me all right? Okay. So, yes, so publications, our policies and tips. And I have to get this off of my screen so I can see. Okay. We get, just a lot of questions throughout the year. And so we went through and revised our publications policies. And I think that really the best thing to do is before you ever start a publication is to just read through those, and it'll be a nice guide for you. So we're going to kind of walk you through some of the highlights. We're not covering the whole thing, but let's just get started. So first of all, we're going to talk about our standards for our publications, then format and design, our categories of publications, and then roles and responsibilities, who does what in regards to peer review, editing, all of that kind of thing, and then assignment of number and the distribution and posting procedures. So starting out with standards, we're going to talk about what do these standards apply to, the purpose of them, what are the author's responsibilities, how do we deal with referencing, and then authorship, and also how to deal with collaborative publications. So these, what we're going over now, these apply to extension publications only. But they do really apply to all of extension publications, both peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed, with only slight differences. Then journal articles, you should always just consult with the journal themselves and follow their style, but always, represent our brand correctly. And then with newspapers or trade magazines, those types of things, again, use their guidelines, and as a default, AP style or Associated Press style is what we use and the university uses. So why this process and policies? I think most of you understand this. It's to enhance our credibility and professionalism. When things look sloppy, then they might think our research is also sloppy. We want to protect your work and just make sure that we have strong scholarship and credentials, and that what we're putting out there is research-based, kind of what differentiates us from Joe Schmo just going up on the internet and posting what he thinks is right or she thinks is right. Uniform standards and processes across the state, we want to ensure that. And of course, we work in the world of academia with academic standards. So as the authors, you all have the responsibility to present accurate information and the integrity of the information. Of course, like we are with students, you have to ensure that you are not plagiarizing or infringing on copyright. So that means if you use somebody else's information, you reference those, and you all, I think, do a good job of doing that. Research-based information, and then most should be written to the average reading level of 8th grade is what we say. I know in practice that's hard to do, but that's what we should strive for. For most of our publications, we're writing for a general public audience. There are times when, there's exceptions made because this fact sheet, for instance, you're really writing it to share with others in your profession who are in academia, so those might be at a higher level. Other ones might be a fact sheet or a tip sheet for parents of toddlers who are English as a second language learners. So that might be written to a different level. So we take those things into account. References, as I said, we have to cite them, but you can choose what style. The main thing is just to be consistent. So you'll see me go through and edit, if you're putting a comma after the year, then I just make sure you put a comma after the year everywhere, that type of thing. It doesn't matter which style you want to use. I would recommend you use whatever your particular profession or industry uses, but be consistent throughout. So authorship, the first authorship should be a university employee unless it's authorized by our extension director. Classified students can also co-author articles if a university faculty is a co-author or the area director approves it and that individual made a substantial original contribution to the scholarly work. Collaborative publications, so this is with other institutions. They should be only published under one institution. So you all as authors need to decide, which institution should be the publisher of this information. Then the extension logo should be prominently placed and accurately reflect extension's role. The author and the area director and I can weigh in to discuss and determine if you have questions about collaborative publications. So next we will go to our format and design section. We'll talk about templates that are available, required elements on all publications, what fonts to use, additional formatting guidelines, and then everybody's favorite topic, accessibility. So templates, these are kind of an evolving thing for us, as Shauna said. We're trying to update templates, create some new templates for you to use, and they are on our employee resources site that Shauna showed you. You aren't required to use our templates, but, and this is for extension publications, but you must display the required elements and you need to follow the university and the college branding guidelines that are available at these links. The templates are meant to be a tool and to help you, not to restrict you or make you do, mundane or boring looking things. But as I said, we're working on updating all those, so hopefully they're getting a little facelift. So required elements are the extension logo on the front page, the author's name and title, the publication number that I assign, the current EEOAA statement, and I encourage you to, before you just grab an old one from your last year's publication, go to our toolkit and our communication standards and make sure that you have the up-to-date one because the university does change that. Current copyright statement, which we have also recently updated with our new branding of extension, so make sure you get that. Then this we call our partnership statement, which recognizes our federal, state, and county partnership. And then if it's a peer-reviewed publication, make sure you put that little peer-reviewed icon that we kind of added a couple years ago, a few years ago. Maybe it's been longer than that, time flies. Okay, so for fonts, these are university standards. For titles, headlines, and author, the sans serif font is the Myriad Pro. So sans serif are the ones without the little curly cues on them. And then the serif font is for body, copy, cut lines, and captions, and that's Minion Pro. If you don't have those, some good defaults are Arial, because almost everybody has Arial for the sans serif, and Times New Roman for the serif. You can choose other readable, accessible, similar fonts, but I highly suggest you choose ones that you know are common so that pretty much everybody who opens up your document would be able to read it. The size should be appropriate for the column width. The wider the column, the larger the font is required in order for it to be the most readable. And if there's all kinds of more information on typography and branding in the university's guidelines at that website. A few additional formatting tips. We highly recommend you put a space between paragraphs. Again, it breaks up all that heavy text and makes it more readable. Left justification only, which means just line up over, just line up over here. When you left and right justify, it creates all these weird big spaces between words and it just makes it a little more difficult for us to read. And include page numbers because it's just very good to be able to reference when people are using your publication. Moving on to accessibility, we have all heard so much about this, but All of our publications, and before they're posted on the website, have to meet the university's accessibility policy. And at this website, they have tips on creating accessible documents. We highly recommend that you get the university training before beginning your document. It's a lot easier to go ahead and create your document accessible than it is to backtrack and try to do it afterwards. Believe me, I know. So for more tips, Ashley has some great tips on our accessibility section of our college's brand toolkit. Now we will get to the categories of our publications, which are the peer-reviewed and editorial reviewed. So peer-reviewed are those research-based, referenced publications that go through our formal peer-reviewed guidelines and process. So we will go through that in pretty good detail. The editorial reviewed is pretty much everything else. So it doesn't go through the peer review process, but they're still informational. They still should have research-based information and have be of high quality, consistent with our standards. So we'll do editorial reviewed first, since those are a little quicker and easier to go through. So these contain things like training materials, newsletters, and informational publications. So some examples of training materials. So they're educational, but they're not peer reviewed. They might be intended for a specific audience or training, and sometimes a limited time frame. So if we're giving a workshop for hunters on how to use food safety practices when handling their meat, and we might have created a worksheet or a workbook or a tip sheet, and it's not peer reviewed, but we want that available online. So we therefore go ahead and and make sure it's editorial reviewed, even though it's not peer reviewed, and get it posted up on the website. Newsletters are another large category. We have a lot of newsletters. So these are not necessarily reviewed at the college level, but they may be within the county or the area. We are trying to give some training to some of our admin assistants to kind of be that second pair of eyes to look these things over for branding and for edits. And we're also getting some templates created. So if those may not be up yet, but they should be shortly. So if you change our templates on newsletters, if you change the masthead or the formatting, those need to be approved by the area director and by me, just to make sure that they still look professional and reflect our branding. Informational publications is kind of a catch-all category for other things that we want published or we want online. I've seen things come through where it was maybe a little 4-page sheet about a 5-year grant and what were the results of that, but it's not something we're putting through peer review. But again, we want this accessible to the public, so we do a brochure or a pamphlet on it and report those results. Okay, now we'll get to peer reviewed, which is what most of you probably are more familiar with in terms of process. So we have 7 general categories, so we'll kind of walk you through those. Fact sheets are probably what most everybody is familiar with. These are concise with a specific focus that can more or less stand alone. They're usually 4 to 6 pages. Sometimes they're only 2 pages. They can be more if you have tables or graphs. They likely require several months or maybe a year, but they still represent scholarship expected from university faculty. Special publications are usually either on multiple topics or more in-depth coverage of a complex topic. They might be they're usually more than 6 pages. And I mean, there's a great variety. I've seen special publications that were 8 pages, and I've probably seen special publications that were 60 or 80 pages. They might contain information that would be several separate fact sheets and take multiple years of research and scholarship. They contain original research and presentation of research-based material. So, and this is where we get questions a lot. Well, what should it be? And really, your area director should help you be able to decipher what it should be. You can always call me if you want me to weigh in, or your area director can. But here's some examples. So, how to control tall white top with herbicides. That's pretty narrow focus. So that's probably going to be a fact sheet. But that information might be incorporated into a publication called How to Control Nevada's Top 20 Noxious Weeds, which would then more likely be a special publication. Another example, we've had fact sheet testing your well water on your small ranch. It's something that we can pretty much tell in 4 to 6 pages. It's pretty narrowly focused, but that information was incorporated into our small ranch management guide that we did, I don't know, 10 years ago probably, and that was like a 100-page special publication. So that gives you some examples. Curriculum materials, it's pretty self-explanatory. They learner-centered and pilot tested before peer review. That's a big important part of the process. Developed as teaching materials, and this does include web-based interactive curricula, whether it's for educators and students or others. And it does need to be current technology. Audiovisual and electronic materials can be videos, which primarily now are probably going to be on YouTube or websites. And again, though, they need to use current technology and have clear objectives before the script is written. Computer software programs, I haven't seen a lot of these come through. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. If you go to do one of these, I encourage you to talk with your area director and some of our communications team before you do it. Apps, again, we've started to dabble in this, but again, they need to use current technology, have clear objectives, and pilot tested. Web-based programs, any programs that you're going to use on the web. And big important thing, as always, is to meet accessibility requirements, be pilot tested, current technologies. So roles and responsibilities we'll get to. Is there anybody with questions? I'm not seeing the chat buttons come up on. Let me see over here. I just wanted to see if we any questions. I'll leave it to you, Shannon, to interrupt me if we get questions.
There are no questions right now.
Okay. So going on, identification and format. So all publications are numbered and cataloged by me. The standards they have to be compatible with our federal and university policies. And then these are developed by our communications team and always approved by Extension Administration. So the author's responsibilities are to determine the need and justify it with their area director, conduct the literature search and do the research. And then the author is the one that completes and submits the peer review worksheet and form, which those include your suggested reviewers to the area director with the draft publication. Now, your area director may also dig up some other reviewers, but it is incumbent upon you to give them a nice list of some suggested reviewers. That will help speed the process along for you to get your publication completed. You want to provide a copy for each reviewer, and we will go through how many copies you need if you're not transmitting it electronically. So we're going to talk about how many and what type of reviewers are required, explain what the blind review process is, and then we'll talk about when we need to translate publications into another language. So required reviewers, as a general rule, you should have an appropriate state specialist in that given discipline for any publication whenever possible. And your required reviewers do slightly differ depending on categories. So fact sheets, you need 3 qualified reviewers, and this is, you need responses from 3. It's not you send out 3 and you get 1 back, it's good to go. You need responses from at least 3 qualified reviewers. 1 needs to be outside of the area or department, and 1 needs to be an intended audience member. For special publications and curriculum, because they're more extensive, you need 5 qualified reviewers to respond. 1 needs to be out of state, 1 outside of our system of higher education, and 1 an intended audience member. Audiovisuals, so very important, reviewers need to review it during the draft script stage before your final video editing. And also your area director then needs to give final approval to this at the script stage before final video editing. This one requires 3 qualified reviewers, 1 from outside the area, and 1 an intended audience member. Computer software, web-based programs and apps. They get handle the same as special pubs and curriculum, but you also, well, one of those reviewers, one of the 5, need to be a multimedia or internet technology expert. So they can weigh in on that aspect of it. So the blind review process is the responsibility of the area director. As we said, authors can suggest some reviewers, but the director chooses who to ask. And the double blind process is that the reviewers are not given the author's name and the author is not given the reviewer's names. The area director forwards the draft publication, the peer review form, and the reviewer's form to the reviewers. So there's a form that the reviewers fill out that say the publication's okay as it is, or it's okay with the changes, or it's unacceptable, and then they elaborate, and that's what we're talking about when we say the reviewer's form. And the area director is responsible for ensuring that the reviewer's suggestions are sufficiently noted and incorporated as appropriate. So translation, if you have a publication that you are doing in a different language, and we do have several, you need an additional reviewer to make sure that it is translated appropriate for the reading level and culture of the intended audience. And then after that approval, the publication does receive a separate number from the English version, assuming there is one. Following the peer review, the area director is responsible for the final approval of the publication's content. And that's when the publication is ready to come to me with the publication approval form, which is what gets us into our next section of assignment of a number and distribution procedure. So,
Claudine, we do have one question in that session.
Okay.
From Clark County 4-H. It says to get the curriculum published, it must be reviewed by the 5 mentioned, or just so that it can be used?
What do you mean by the 5 mentioned?
Are we allowed to talk on it?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just trying to make sure that if we're publishing curriculum, is that one we need? Because a few slides ago you were saying that it needed to be you had to have someone from out of the area, people that are outside of Inchy, a person that it would be used on, all of that in order for it to be put on the 4-H online, or so that we can use it at all. It needs to have been reviewed by all of these people.
Well, I mean, ideally, any curriculum that we're using should be research-based, and it should be peer-reviewed, and so it should go through our publication procedure. I think the question you're asking is maybe something you should also discuss with your area director. I know, obviously not everything we use goes through our peer review process, but if it's a curriculum that you're using with your 4-H audience, and Shannon, you can weigh in too, but I would think that ideally we would put that through our peer review process and make it a publication.
Thank you.
There is another question. If a publication is bilingual, does it get 2 separate numbers?
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to think if I've seen one come up. Is this Heidi? Is this our landscape stuff maybe? I don't know that I've seen that, but I don't think it would. Not if it's one publication. If it's one publication that just has both translated together, then I wouldn't assign that 2 separate numbers, because people are going to bring up and it's one publication.
You'll be getting 10 of them soon, Claudine.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. I thought that was you. Yeah, no, those we'll just do one number if they're all on, if they're published as one document. Okay.
One more question.
All right.
Has a formal process been established yet to get documents translated into Spanish?
No, not to my knowledge. I know we've had some suggestions from people, but I don't think that we have a formal process. Shauna, can you?
Yeah, I can weigh in. There is a translation department at the university, the main campus, and we can send that link in the follow-up to this. But You can send things through the university's translation department. There is a fee for that. So we don't have anything specific within extension, but there is something through the university, but again, there is a fee, and we can send that link to make sure everybody has that.
Okay. Next, okay, so now we'll go to the publication approval form. So again, these links all take you, when you go to these links, you will get all of the peer review forms and the publication approval form. And these, again, we're in the process of updating. We need to, they don't have all of our categories, so we need to add some of those. We need to fix our branding, but that will all be done shortly. So the author fills it out and consults with the area director as needed. If you don't know if it's a fact sheet or a special pub, those types of things, your area director can help you sort that out. This is really important. The author must include several keywords for online searching. If you don't do this, your information, when you do post it, people aren't going to find it. So please take the time to thoughtfully put in several keywords so that people can find your information. You and the area director are going to decide how often your publication needs updating. So that can vary from every year, or kind of the default is every 5 years, but that's something that you need to look at the information and decide how often you need to review it. And your area director signs off on it and then submits it to me with your publication draft electronically, usually these days. And the draft has to be complete with artwork and graphs and so forth. And we get some questions on that, but really I find as many errors in the artwork and graphs and charts as I do in the text. And so we really need to see the complete document. Otherwise, there's no checks and balances for all of the artwork and graphs. And if you're working in with a grant and with an outside designer, just bill that cost and that time, that timeline into your project. Of course, if it's too large, you can submit it other ways. Any exceptions need to be noted and by the author. So pricing, this doesn't come up too often, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. But basically, if it is something you need to charge for, you need to consult with your area director about the cost and our rules regarding cost recovery, and if you want to print the price on the publication before it's printed. If an outside entity does fund the printing, which this has happened fairly often, that needs to be noted on the publication and that credit given to that entity. So our communications review, this is really when I or we come into the process. So a lot of times I get questions about the peer review and all that, and most of those questions are better directed to your area director. I'll answer them as I can, but a lot of times I'll say, well, that's the peer review process. I recommend you talk with your area director. The communications review is when it comes to me. And then I'm checking for our required elements and our branding and adherence to our extension guidelines, and editing for format, spelling, punctuation, grammar style, clarity, consistency, professionalism. I'll look for things like jargon and acronyms and tell you not to use them and to spell them out and those types of things. Then I assign a publication number and return the draft with the edits and notes to the author, copying your area director and the extension director. And then the author makes the final corrections. So the first author of the publication is responsible for making sure the edits are made and making sure the publication is accessible for posting online, and forwarding the electronic file in the original file format and as an accessible PDF to the area director and to me. So in terms of electronic publishing or putting it on the web, the first author is responsible for putting it on our extension website, and that's done by logging onto our personnel management system. And when you do that, you can either add your publication as a web page or as an accessible PDF. So you've got two choices on how to do it. And you can click this little button right here and find the instructions that Ashley has put on our website. If you do have questions after you try to load it, you can contact Ashley, who is our web and social media specialist. Printing, the university's policy, any publications or for that matter, any marketing materials that print at a cost of $50 or more must be identified as such on the publication's approval form and must follow the university's print release process. And then you must receive approval prior to printing, not after the fact. Archive distribution, I won't go into great detail, but we need 4 hard copies so that we can distribute them to these archives. And then we will also forward an electronic accessible PDF to the Nevada State Library and Archives, and we will keep them here in our digital master files as well. So this is kind of an approximate timeline because we get asked a lot about timeline, but I emphasize approximate because everybody operates differently, and we don't control the process from here right now. So your publication and peer review forms go to the area director for peer review, and that's on your own timeline. What has been said and has kind of been the standard is that 3 months later, the peer review process should be complete. Now, if you have curriculum or something, it may take longer. What I really highly suggest is you just mark on your calendar every maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks, you check in with your area director or whoever they have designated to help that peer review process along, because I can't tell you how many times 2 or 3 months has maybe gone by and then they check with me, hey, do you have it yet? No. And then they go back to the area director and they, oh no, we haven't, nobody's responded. And then it's like you're still at square one. So try to keep on top of it and see if they have checked in with those they've requested and that if your peer review is actually happening. Don't just assume that it's moving along. Then you make your changes, and that's on your own timeline right now. And then the area director will submit the draft and the signed approval form to me. And that, again, check with your area director when that happens and say, well, how long is this going to take it for you to get to me? I think usually that's pretty quick. And then my standard turnaround time is within a month. However, if you have a curriculum or a 80-page special pub, or if it's the end of year, it will definitely take longer because I get most of our publications probably in the 3 weeks before our deadline of December 1 every year. So if you're going to wait till then, you got to know that it's not going to get back to you as soon. Usually too, if it's something that I think is going to take longer, during the year, I will get back to you and say, hey, I got this, I'm on it, but I might not get it back to you in 30 days because of other things going on. And then the rest of the process is on your own timeline as far as when you make it accessible for posting on the web and doing those other things. So then after you publish your publication online is kind of when the clock starts ticking, and that's when your review cycle starts. So that's established again when you fill out your publication approval form with your area director. You guys will decide how often your publication should be reviewed. No greater than 5 years. If it changes, if the information may change more often, it can be required as often as annually. Usually you and your area director will, you and your area director will decide that. Then after the clock starts ticking and you've loaded your publication, your area director, and myself, we will all receive an automatic email when it's time for review. This is something that's being set up right now, and our database, Robert, is setting it up so that we will all get an automatic email because we've kind of been lax in being able to track this, and we don't want to do that. Then the authors will have 90 days to respond. And after that, the author will receive an email stating that it'll be removed from the website until the author recertifies it. So author can recertify it or work with the area director to update or revise it. When the author is gone, which this has happened, the area director is then responsible for review or designating somebody to review it, or for saying, well, we just need to take it down. When a publication's been recertified, the year of the certification should be placed in parentheses below the original publication number. So that's when it's just been recertified. So you're not making changes, but we still want to track that this has been reviewed and recertified. It's not just old information that nobody's looked at. Then the cycle for certification would begin again. But if it's determined that you need revisions, the peer review process is again required. Maybe. So there's minor changes, substantive changes, and author changes. So we'll go through those three different things. So for minor changes, these are updates that might be, you know, maybe you referred to the 2010 census, but now you want to put the 2020 census in there, but the rest of all the text and the information is the same. Or you want to put in somebody else's contact information because that's changed, or a plant name's changed, or whatever. But if it's minor things like that, no additional peer review is needed. And again, your area director will determine that with you. In those cases, your publication will retain the original number and author, and the date of the update, again, must be placed in parentheses below the number of the publication, and you do not get a new publication number. But if you have substantive changes, there's been new information or research, new products, new technology, things have changed in the economy or ecology. So this is more of a substantial rewrite, or at least large chunks of it are being redone. Then the area director would determine that a peer review process is needed, and a new number would be given to the publication after the communications review is complete. So in these substantive changes, it really goes through the whole peer review process. It's just like almost like it's a new publication. But when you submit it for the communications review, it is very helpful if you submit a copy of the publication with the proposed changes noted or tracked, unless it's just the whole thing's completely redone. But I know, like, some of our Living with Fire guides have done this. It's been very helpful. There's, you know, maybe it's a 12-page publication and there's only changes on 3. So they track them for me and circle it, and that way we don't have to reread the whole thing that's already been reviewed before. So if these substantive changes are made and the author is now different than the original author, the new author should be listed as the author on the new publication. But you should also reference the original author and the number on that new publication so that they do get credit for the original work. So I am not going to go through this, but I tried to do this kind of handy dandy little guide so that you can flip to and just see sort of a step-by-step of 12 steps to success for getting your publication through the process, because I know it's confusing. I've dealt with this process for more years than I'd like to admit, and even I still have to look back to the actual policy to answer questions sometimes. But here's kind of a little roadmap. And then this is, I just kind of did this to, again, point you in the right direction for some general things. If you're wondering what publication category, that's probably something that your area director can help you determine. If you have questions about the peer review process or periodic review, again, suggest that you contact your area director. If some of these policies you're like, you know, I don't know, I think this is a better way to do it, or whatever. Then again, I think if you start with your area director and discuss those with him or her, they can kind of put those up our food chain, and you know, there's always some room for improvement or changes needed. Communications review and edits, that's call me, email me, whatever. I'm happy to discuss them, debate them, and answer any questions. Loading publications to the website, that's Ashley. After you look at all of her handy dandy materials she has on our website. And then with printing and print release, that's pretty straightforward on the website, but Cindy Kay can also help with those if you have any questions on that. I think that's it. I know I went through that quickly. I hate to keep people late, so I'm assuming we might have some questions. Oh, 14 questions or no?
So we have, the only new question that I see is from Carol Bishop. What about infographics?
Well, what is your question on infographics? You can talk, Carol.
I guess, okay, I guess my question is, how does that handled? It's because there's like, for the research I'm doing in the back with the cactus, I just want to do something that's more visual, less wordy? So like a 2-page, something with a front and a back with a lot of pictures and graphs. So how does that,
Okay, I think
how do I handle that process?
I think those are great, and I mean we're doing some of those types of things. I know Buddy, in his NEAP program, economic information for each county. They're doing some nice little front and back sheets that are primarily infographics too. So I think that's a great way to convey information. Those should still go through the publication process. The only thing that I have to say might be challenging or more challenging with those is when you go to post those to the website, making them accessible, it's going to be more challenging. But having said that, infographics I think are very useful. It's just going to pose a little bit more challenges when you do go to post them to our website. But the process is the same.
So I could do something that would be
A front and back that was mostly
less graphical for the web then. Okay, cool. So once I develop it and put all my little pretty pictures up there, just send it through regular channels. And does it get a number or anything, or?
Well, yes,
No.
yes, it absolutely would get a number, and and depending on if you want it to be peer reviewed or not peer reviewed would be which category, but that would be the way to go. But I do want to forewarn you that when you go to do accessibility, you'll be a little bit more challenged. So
Okay.
just build
Cool.
that into
Thank
your timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
So I want to thank our presenters today for all of the information. If there is no additional questions, just a reminder to take the short survey by clicking on the link in your chat pod. And we will see you on our next webinar. It's Civil Rights and Compliance. And that will be next week. And you should have an Outlook invite in your email. If not, feel free to contact me. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.